All right, welcome back to another episode of Talkin' Block, our pre-Evo episode of Talkin' Block. I am with MajinTenshinhan Taylor. Nicholas, how are you doing today?
Doing really good. I was up super late working Smash Factor, but I'm back at it. I'm ready to get into Evo.
I was gonna say you better be used to sleeping not at all, because Evo weekend, I hear, for you tournament coverage guys is I actually did it last year and it was grueling. But thank you so much for doing that. So Nick gets to see all of the ins and outs of all these games and how they play out, and from the streams to the results and the character usage, all that stuff. So we want to talk a little bit about what Evo is going to be like. This is a different Evo than we've ever seen before because it's breaking records, and not by any small margin. The record before was a little above 5,000 entrants, and that was for Street Fighter V in its launch year of 2016. Flash forward here to 2023, and Street Fighter VI in its launch year has over 7,000 entrants. No one's ever done that. No one's ever come close before. So it's going to be a different look than ever before. And then we have a couple of other games that break 1,000 entrants. It's going to be the biggest Evo that we've ever seen. With that in mind, what's going to be different about it? The first thing that I want to dig into here is the potential for tournament fatigue and how grueling this is going to be for the players that actually go far and make it far in the bracket. Because I don't know, this might be a little bit controversial, but I have felt myself and talked to plenty of people that say Street Fighter VI is particularly mentally taxing. And I think that's because, well, you can play footsies with someone, they can jump forward, they can do forward moving, horizontal attacks, things like that, like a Honda headbutt or a Blanca ball. So you got to be ready for all that stuff. But then you also have to be ready for drive rush at any point. And to me, that feels like an extension of footsies that makes it like footsies is a 2/3 of a screen now, instead of just when you're near your opponent. And to be engaged like that consistently all the way through is very difficult, especially for certain characters. I'm a JP player, so I'm always worried that someone's going to get through my defenses and give me hell. To play through that in tournament, and maybe you go on stream, but even if you don't, it's Evo. It's the biggest event of the year, arguably speaking, maybe not Capcom Cup. And, it's all on the line, and every time you win, you are playing a progressively better player. And so by the third or fourth win, you're running into Xiaohai and Smug and Tokido and all the likes. So it's going to be a really difficult process. And I was looking at it here, if my math is correct, looking at the tournament brackets, if you stay in winners, it's going to take you 10 wins in a row to break into top 8, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot. You're like, I streak online, get 10 wins in a row. This isn't streaking online. This is you play a couple of people online equivalent, and then you run into pros and they're better and better and better. If you go to losers first round, you've got to win some 19 wins to break into top 8 from there. And again, this is in Street Fighter VI, where it's an incredibly, as far as I'm concerned, grueling and strenuous game. So Nick, what do you think about that? Are the people in top 8 going to show up to the top 8 with their tongues hanging out of their mouths and completely fried and unable to perform, or what's it going to be like?
No. In top 8, you're fine, because that's going to be a different day, right? It's everything before top 8 that's going to be a complete nightmare. Because, like you were saying, I think the core aspect of Street Fighter VI is that you need to always be on point. Mm-hmm. That's true to some extent in fighting games in general, but there's very little relief in Street Fighter VI. You also don't have a lot of pressure in the same way that you do in other games. You have to be quite active in your pressure. So this time where you can actually kind of relax your brain and flowchart isn't as much there.
No, absolutely not.
In Street Fighter VI. So it's very taxing. I think everyone agrees with that at a high level. And yeah, as you said, like winning all these sets, making it through, and I think it's going to be largely spread across 2 days, because many pools are going to be played on Friday and then a bunch on Saturday, and then everything down to, it's actually top 6 even now. They changed to that for the main stage.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be insane how far you have to go to be able to stay in the running. And as you said, you're progressively fighting harder opponents. And you also need to consider, on top of that, on top of everything we've already lined out, some characters are going to be even more taxing for you to fight, partially because of, them being rough matchups potentially for your character, but also a character like Dalsim, whatever the matchup is, it's annoying, right? that kind of thing is going to be taxing. So imagine you have to run into 4 Dawsons in a row just by chance. That's going to burn all of your
You're going to have
fuel.
no mental drive meter left after something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I played in a grand finals in a local tournament that we had a couple of weeks ago, and grand finals is 3 out of 5 instead of 2 out of 3. Just playing through the first set. It was my JP versus Kyoku's DJ, and we played through the first set, and I was like, man, it's over. Oh, wait, it's not over. It's just the first set. No, it's just the first game. It was so much, and it was in a good way, because the game evolves constantly. You feel like, oh no, they've figured something out. They've figured an in out through my zoning, for instance. Oh, but I haven't been using this maneuver. I haven't been using this part of the mechanics, and now I start using this, and it changes everything. And then they adapt and back and forth, and that happens so easily in this game. But being ready for everything all at once, you just can't do. So it's really just staying one step ahead of your opponent. And yes, that's true in all fighting games. But I like the way you said it, that you really can't fall into any reliable autopilots like you could in previous games. I got my start in Street Fighter 4. Not only were there option selects and such, so you could kind of just like dial in things and your character would do the best thing, but you could also just kind of rest on your laurels. Yeah, I'm just gonna just out solid this person, and whatever they do, I'm just gonna be ready for it. It's like, no, in this game, you have to very rapidly download what your opponent's game plan is and be ready for them in the ways that they want to attack you, or in the ways that they're not going to be ready for you to attack them. And the importance of doing that is so huge, because it's not super hard to get a bunch of damage out of in this game. You know, a combo into drive rush into super, just about anyone that's played for a little while can do that sort of a thing. And to the extent that you're able to pull that kind of a thing off, or make that kind of a situation viable for yourself, you can win. And I think anybody, generally speaking, anyone can beat anyone on any given Sunday. And I don't mean that this game is random, but I mean, as soon as you fall off and you're not honed in, it's on you. And so very similar to Street Fighter 5 there, because it felt like anyone could beat anyone, but it felt like it was kind of out of your control to an extent, and we don't have to go into that. This game, that's still there, but it's on you. And so now the onus is on you to stay ahead and to do that consistently at EVO, especially if you don't play a character that is usually getting the party started and you're trying to reactionary whiff punish and then get your stuff going. It's going to be so hard, and I can only imagine how rough it's going to be for like Zangief and Lily players. Like, do they have a chance?
For sure. Yeah, that's going to be so hard, because for a character like Zangief, who I've played a decent amount, I sub the character, every matchup is a struggle in some kind of way, right? But some of them, Guile, JP, Dalsim, are complete nightmares, right? So even if you don't run into those, your mental stack is going to be shot by game 6 or 7 somewhere. And then if you actually had to get through those and you actually, beat them, you're still going to be exhausted right after. And I think one more thing that needs to be brought up, since I went to EVO last year for the first time, played in Grand Fantasy Versus mainly, jet lag is absolutely massive, and this is something that most Americans don't have to experience as much when going to these major events, because West Coast to East Coast, yeah, it's 3 hours, it's fine, but for me it was 9 hours, and for the Japanese players it's like 16 hours, and they're going for the event. Like, a lot of people don't really have a lot of time to take off. They're coming like maybe the day before the event or something, right? So adjusting to that is also extremely difficult. So imagine you're already in subpar conditions as it is, and then you get thrown into this.
It's all the money that you spent, all the time that you've spent, whether or not your significant other is down with the fact that you're spending this much time and money to go to Las Vegas for a weekend and play video games with a bunch of people. It can stack up pretty quickly, and it's not just the mental stack of the game. So with that, I do think that this is going to be a more interesting, at least in that avenue, EVO and competitive experience. And I gotta wonder if a few names that would traditionally have made it, and who knows which ones, but like, certain somebody that is always in top 8s just cracks beforehand, and that opens the floodgates up for someone new that hasn't been there before. Things could shake out differently, and I'm going to be especially intrigued at how gameplay performances are towards the end of the tournament, especially on Saturday evening. We'll see. But I'd love to hear what you guys think, if what you're looking forward to most about the competition at EVO, and if you think that Street Fighter 6 is going to be an absolute slog to get through for the competitors, which is exciting for the audience. So we've established that it's going to be harder to perform consistently because the way Street Fighter 6 is, there's over 7,000 entrants at EVO. The spotlight is hot on you. You're not playing from the comfort of your office at home. It's going to be hard enough to get far. I want to talk about the characters that kind of lend themselves to this, that we think are going to be the best performers at EVO. Kind of which characters do we suppose are going to be more prevalent in top 8, if that's a huge factor. If there's maybe a character that just because of their nature, even a really high level player is not going to be able to take very far because it's asking too much and it's too big of a mountain. But let's get into it here, Nick. Which characters do you think are going to perform the best at EVO and why, off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I think Guile, Ken, and Luke are all going to perform quite well. First of all, I think they are all top 5 characters. They're quite generally accepted as top 5 characters. And I think they all have a very solid game plan, which isn't necessarily that they get to have this relaxation time, because we already kind of talked about that not being much of a thing. Mm-hmm. But you're focusing on generally the same kind of things with them. And I think that is going to help in the long run when you're doing all this kind of stuff, because I mean, Guile, for example, right? It's honestly mentally taxing to play that character, especially in a game with no chip damage, because you're just sitting forever and just chucking booms and doing the whole thing, and if they get in on you, that's going to be a huge mental blow. But
I would argue that Guile is still doing chip damage in this game, even if it's not coming off your life, but you play that game to do chip in this game in no insignificant way.
I mean, okay, yeah, that is a fair statement, because you are chipping at their drive gauge, and if you do chip that down, then obviously you are doing actual chip at that point. So yeah, there's a longer way to get to that chip damage, is probably a better way of putting it.
Okay.
But yeah, and even though that is like, okay, so this is something that I have to keep doing, and I might get shot with like, oh, they did a jump in at exactly the perfect time, like on a hard read, and now that screwed me over. It's gonna be a hard hit mentally, but it's still gonna be more relaxing than playing a character where you have to look at like 15 situations at once. Like there's this meme people always post with different fighting games where one character has a go-to anti-air and the other one has to make like 15 decisions, right? So one is like doing physics in their head and the other one is just like, oh, press funny button. And it's a little bit like that in a sense. So that, coupled with them being strong characters, I think makes them perfect candidates to go far in this type of tournament, where characters like Chun-Li or DJ, who are kind of juggling a bunch of different stuff while they're doing it, while still being very strong characters, are going to have a harder time in this type of, play 12 to 14 sets in one day type of event. I
gotta ask then, you didn't say Cammy. I was gonna say you didn't say Cammy or Jury. I suppose I can see the argument that while Jury is very effective in that footsie's horizontal space, the rushdown space, she's got a few more hoops to jump through with storing up charges and stuff. But Cammy, you didn't say Cammy. Why not?
I do think Cammy has a fairly straightforward game plan as well. I think she falls into that category, but she's actually not in my top 5, which Ken, Luke, and Guile are, and I think that's kind of why I didn't really mention her. But I think she's like 6th, so I'm not saying she's not great. I think she's really good. So
she's one of the first that comes to my mind, and not to say that Ken and Luke aren't, because I think they have a lot going for them, and it's not particularly difficult. It's not especially difficult for them to do the stuff that they want to do. Cammy has always been that. Maybe she's not quite as much that as she was in SF4 or SF5, and I'm just kind of remembering. But I do think she's one of those up there that I wouldn't be surprised to see a Cammy player make it in the top 8, based on what the character is.
No, absolutely. I think Cammy is a character that is well suited for this type of bracket as well. I just don't have her quite as high on my internal character ranking as I do with Guile, Ken, and Luke.
Do you have any characters that you think are going to be just absolutely insanely difficult to perform with long term? Not even, I mean, probably lower tiers, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like, I'm thinking of JP, and as a JP player, he's a very strong character. You can argue he's top 5. I think he's top 8, something like that. But he's a character that, one, frustrates other people and fatigues other people like crazy. But he's also one that, as a JP player, you're constantly worried about people pressing in, getting past your stuff, drive rushing through, or jumping in at a good time, and just making your life hell. And with his lack of kind of movement, in at least in his walk speed and such, it can be hard. You know, it's scary as a zoner to get zoned or to get broken through. So I think about JP, and it can be very taxing because I feel the need to be ready at every advance to stop you, and that's a lot to be juggling. But what are your thoughts on JP, first of all? And I don't think he's the worst, by the way, but he's one I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, I think JP is going to be difficult. That's just the nature of the beast when playing a zoner. I spent most of my time in Grand Fantasy Versus playing Matera, who is a zoner character with some movement options, some not so good. And I think JP kind of falls almost into the exact same category because he has these like teleport shenanigans. His jump is actually pretty good, but his walk speed leaves something to be desired, and his normals are definitely not bad. But like when you're up close, JP isn't really that scary, and getting up close isn't it depends on your character. If you're Zangief, it's actually really hard to get up close with JP, but for a lot of characters, it's not that hard. So because you're going to Evo, so let's use you specifically as an example. So if you play in a pool and you have to play 3 Camis in a row, that's going to be really annoying for you.
Yes.
And that's going to tax you out a lot worse than it would for someone else. Like if a Chem has to play against Cami, for example, sure, she's annoying, but she's not like invalidating your game plan to a certain extent. I don't think Cami just runs over JP for free, but I think she has an easier in than a lot of other characters would do, which makes it more frustrating for the JP player.
Absolutely.
So I think we also kind of saw this results-wise for CEO, because I remember we did an episode back then as well where we talked about how I think it was the top 96. JP was the most represented character,
popular.
but then when we got then when we got down to top 24, there was like none left.
There were none. No, none made it past 24th. So that was interesting too. Is he can hold his own for a while, but then people are going to crack and fall apart. I
think worse than JP though. I just need to mention this. Worse than JP is Dalsim, because Dalsim he's always been like that, and I think people kind of got accustomed to a Street Fighter V Dalsim, where he had some really gnarly mix-ups and some massive damage, and he's not bad in this game, but he doesn't have those types of, for lack of a better word, those types of cheats, right? He's a much more straightforward character who really needs to just stay solid in the game plan here. I mean, I don't want to say he wasn't doing that in Street Fighter V, but it was a different type of game.
Too. It takes time for the Dalsim players to figure out how to really play Dalsim at the level of getting to top 8 at Evo. So, I mean, someone like F-Champ has done it before and maybe is going to do it again this time. Who knows? Mr. Crimson, there's a plenty of promising Dalsim players out there. But I would say give those guys a year or two, and then they're more likely to hit a top 8 at Evo. It's just because of the nature of the character. And on the flip side of that, I got to ask about Rashid. He's going to be there. He's out. He's been out for a little while. They fixed the really crazy bug about him where his super was going on forever. And people are starting to get some experience with him. He's got some zany stuff. He's playing his own game in terms of he can go to the air and then he can double jump, and your anti-airs are not. Your anti-airs against like Ken are not the same thing when you're playing against Rashid because of the way he can maneuver in the air and things along those lines. So the onus is on, I would say, the person playing against Rashid to figure out how to beat Rashid, and you've only got about 10 days since release before Evo kicks off. So I wanted to ask what your thoughts on how do you think Rashid's going to perform this weekend?
I think Rashid is going to do well this weekend, but I also think one thing that Rashid is going to suffer from is the fact that he's releasing so close to Evo means a lot of people aren't going to be willing to actually commit to the character. I think a perfect example we have is Big Bird, who's been winning almost everything he entered with Marissa, and he's been playing Rashid a ton. He used to play Rashid in Street Fighter V. Rashid is his guy. Is he actually going to bring Rashid out at Evo, though? When he has a Marissa he's that good with? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. But I think that's going to be the case for a lot of top players. Is like, okay, but am I gonna because we already mentioned, the money, the travel time, everything you're investing in going to Evo. Are you going to gamble that on a character who's been out this short of a time?
Right. It's got to be... it's got to be a really good matchup that you already understand with the character, maybe like that kind of a scenario. But I don't think we're going to see, I hope we don't see people that are just matter of fact maining Rashid, getting him to top 8 10 days after he came out. I mean, that's its own conversation, but that's maybe a little bit of a bad look. As far as the competitive side of this game goes, you might make your DLC characters especially strong to sell more money or to make more money, sell more units and all that kind of stuff, and fair enough. But I'm hoping that we don't see like one Rashid top 8, fine, fair enough. More than that, and it's like, I don't want to see that as a competitive player.
Sure. And I think that's kind of the worry that's been circling around. You know, there have been so many memes about Rashid right when he came out.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he had that bug. Of course, that was like broken. They patched it out. It's not relevant anymore. But there was a bunch of other stuff that was posted that was absolutely crazy, right? And that's still in the game. Rashid does have absolutely crazy options, but I think even with this short time we've had with him, it's just been a week right now. People have already started to figure out that, like, oh, okay, so this character has a lot of options, but they don't always lead to gigantic reward, whereas other characters can get this massive reward off of their interactions, which might not be as favored for them. In a sense, I feel like Rashid has kind of been brought in line with where we wanted him to be.
They've done a relatively good job balancing all of the different components of the game, gameplay and inside and out. And so I have no reason to expect them to not have done a good job with Rashid outside of what happened in Street Fighter V, but they've been leveling up, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going into Evo with a big smile on my face, and hopefully that I don't get scrubbed out by a Rashid because I didn't do my studying on him or something like that. But I feel like there's a lot of that stuff that could be out there that how are you going to know? And like I said at the beginning of this part of the discussion, I think that it's easier at this point for the Rashid player to have some goofy stuff than for those that are playing against the Rashid to know everything, just because of the way the character sort of works.
I absolutely agree with that, because at the end of the day, Rashid at his core, even in Street Fighter V, but also now in Street Fighter 6, he is the type of character who forces his game plan onto you. So as a player, learning Rashid is probably going to be a bit faster than it's going to be for the opponent to learn how to fight against Rashid. So I think seeing Rashid do well at Evo is absolutely a possibility. It mostly comes down to, okay, but which really good players have actually decided to commit to him this fast?
Yeah. There's a character that jumps out to me that's not particularly bad. She's also not particularly good, but Manon. I think it would be especially difficult to get Manon into the top 8. And the reason for that is because she's not one that gets to just force her will. She plays footsies first and foremost, and most characters do in this game. But she plays footsies, and she has to get an in, and then she can start leveling up. And if she gets that momentum, great, it's in her favor. But she still has to score ins. And we talked in a earlier about how this game has so much mental stack, so much pressure, and she never gets to let up from that. She's always playing that footsie game, and she's dealing with people that can drive rush from various distances away, and maybe she's dealing with a Honda that can headbutt or a Blanca that can Blanca ball at any time, Rashid that's doing some crazy air shenanigans on her. She's just playing kind of the solid neutral game, hoping to get command grabs and find openings, but that seems like such a grueling process that I would be rather surprised to see even someone like Idom take Manon all the way into top 8 in this like tournament, in this event. It's very possible, but I think that she's going to have an especially hard time. I would say something similar for Lily, and of course Zangief is part of this conversation too, right? As a grappler who has to play footsies and stuff, but Zangief seems to be one that jumps forward a little bit more than Manon does in terms of like using drive rush and using like the rainbow kick or using a running bear grab. He's got ways of just going for it, and Manon does a little bit, but not like he does. I don't expect either of those characters to do super well, but I think Manon would be especially difficult because I guess Zangief gets to turn off his brain and go for it a little more often. And I don't mean that Zangief players are brainless. I mean, there are situations where he can just kind of like hope this works, and it might not work out for him, but at least the decision has been made, where Manon is just always focused in and like having to analyze and like just constant main on your mental mana. What do you think?
There's a lot to unpack there, actually, because I do agree that these are three characters that are likely to struggle, but for entirely different reasons. For example, you brought up Lily. I think Lily is actually a character that's very good at forcing her game plan. Like, she is a character that forces her game plan. It's just that her game plan isn't really that good compared to what many other characters do. But she's very centered around just forcing you into a 50-50. And yeah, sure, you can drive reversal it, absolutely. But she can also chip away at your resources. So maybe you're out of drive gauge at that point, or maybe you don't even want to spend the drive gauge because it's quite easy for her to just keep chipping in at you.
Yeah.
As for Manon and Zangief, I think the key issue with Manon is just that she doesn't really gel with the system mechanics, and I think that's intentionally so. Her drive rush is the slowest and the shortest distance. But I think she has way better neutral than Zangief does, which is probably why you feel this this feeling of Zangief going kind of just do it stuff, because he kind of has to. Yeah, whereas Manon is more consistent. So I think Manon is more consistent, Zangief is more explosive, but neither of them really use the drive system that well. I would say Zangief used it better, but neither of them are really using it that well.
I would be surprised to see any of those characters crack top 8. I would be somewhat surprised to see a JP make it too. Not because he doesn't have the tools, but because putting that amount of pressure for someone to perform that consistently with this character for that long is a lot. What do you think? Would you be surprised to see a JP in top 8?
Oh man, I feel like I have to look at all the bracket paths for all the top players. Wow. But obviously we don't have time for that. I think just because of how popular he is at the high level, I would not be surprised to see JP in top 8.
Fair enough. We got Nemo playing him. We got now that I'm on the spot, I can't remember his name, but the guy that did amazingly well at Red Bull Kumite.
Oh yeah. Kakeru. You also have Sonic Fox. There's a bunch of people. I
do think that, there's going to be a Ken, or at least a Ken, a Luke, a Cammy, Jury, I think, are some really top tier candidates. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see someone make it work with DJ. You're right that he's juggling more pins to think about himself, but he's got those options where he can get the job done from pretty much any distance away, and he hits so hard. I wouldn't put Marissa there, except for the way that Big Bird's been going crazy with her. So I think Big Bird top 8 is a good prediction. And if Mena's playing Blanca, we might see a Blanca jump into top 8 too. So anything could happen, but I do think that there are certain characters that, based on what we're going into, this huge tournament with so many matches and such a fatigue, plus the newness of Rashid, I think it's an interesting kind of what's going to happen here. But we'd love to hear in the comments who you guys think are going to show up in the later parts of this tournament. Which characters have the most likelihood to win Evo or to do really well, and why. But after we see some awesome competition, we're also almost certainly going to see some big reveals. Nick, you cover these every single year. I'm going to turn this right over to you and say, what kind of big announcement predictions do we have going into Evo 2023?
Yeah, so we have 8 games on the main stage. It's very common for every game, or at least most of them, to have big announcements relate, like new characters or stuff like that on the main stage. So I figure we can just go through them one by one to start off. First of all, Marvel 3 is not getting an announcement.
You don't think we're getting Marvel vs. Capcom 4?
Not this close to Street Fighter 6. I really don't think that would be in the cards. I think we could potentially get a new Marvel at some point, but I really don't think this is the time or place. And Marvel 3 is included here as the throwback tournament, right? That's a new thing they're doing. So next year we might have CVS 2, or we might have Tekken 5 DR, all kinds of stuff that's possible. I think Marvel 3 is kind of automatically exempt from this, they're going to have an announcement on the stage discussion. At least an announcement related to the game itself. They could do we're doing a huge High Rollers tournament or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah. So I think Marvel 3 is exempt to begin with. So Street Fighter 6, we already know what's coming for Street Fighter 6 character-wise. They've already shown us. So I think we can expect an Aki trailer, maybe a release window as well, potentially. Because she's the next character in line. And besides that, we could have some announcements for Street Fighter 6, but I don't know what they would be, because we already know the character lineup. They're not going to start talking about Season 2 now. It's way too early. We already know Capcom Cup has this massive prize pool. We know the Capcom Cup schedule. I don't know what it would be. right?
Yeah, I guess it's just got to be an Aki teaser or trailer. You'd probably get a full-on trailer. It's not uncommon to do like a double character reveal or a double trailer for something as big as Evo. But you're right, we're only getting 4 characters per year, and it seems like there'll be 1 in each season, right? So Rashid was the summer. I guess Aki would be in the fall, and
then Ed for winter and Akuma for spring, I believe.
Yeah, Ed Winter.
I think that's what we're looking at, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're going to get surprised. And I think that's what you're getting at. With Street Fighter 6, we're not going to get surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so next in line we have Guilty Gear Strive. They just finished their 2nd season a few months ago, but they already announced that they're doing a 3rd one. So it's going to be like a season 3 reveal. They're going to show us a character, and then they're going to have like a lineup, with silhouettes and these are how many characters you're getting, etc. So I think the announcement itself isn't going to be surprising, but the contents might be, because you don't know who the character's going to be, right? So it might be an old favorite, it might be a brand new character. Nobody knows, right? I feel on a personal level that Strive kind of redesigns characters gameplay-wise to an extent where I'm not really hoping for any character in particular. So I would rather see a new character, because I think they do a better job with those personally. So it'd be fun to see them bring someone new into the mix again, even though they've already done that a lot. Like the last character was also a new one, Asuka. But I would like to see something like that again.
How about for where are we at now? Tekken?
Tekken, yeah. So we just had the Tekken 8 beta test, and there were 16 characters in that. There were some data mines about characters that had files in the game. Whether that means that they're gonna be in the full product, or it's just like leftover character data that they were using for whatever purpose.
Sure.
Nobody knows. But it could be characters from there. It could also be something else. I personally think that we are going to see a double character reveal for Tekken 8, because they've still got quite a way before the game is coming out, and we haven't seen a new character yet in Tekken 8.
And there wasn't going to be any guest characters, right? Wasn't that something the developers recently said? So, because my mind immediately goes to Negan just a few years ago, right? Because that was such an impressive and out of left field. No one saw that really coming. At least I didn't. But I guess we're not going to get anything like that, And so I suppose with Tekken, my guess would be, to make it stand out as the Evo announcement, we give 2 big characters that we haven't seen before, something along those lines. But something like a double character reveal, but pretty by the numbers otherwise.
I think they would do a brand new character and probably an old favorite. I'm also going to go on the record predicting, because Tekken has this thing, both Tekken and King of Fighters like to do this, where they release new characters that are kind of homages to where their fan bases are. So where the games are popular, they will make new characters that are like related to that. Because Tekken is really big in Poland, for example, and the last character they released for Tekken 7 was Lydia, who was Polish. Obviously, the main storyline throughout Tekken 7 has been Pakistan and the rise of Pakistan. I really think we're going to see a Pakistani character come out for Tekken 8, and that's going to be like the big reveal at Evo.
Makes sense. What else we got here? Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, I mean, they've been pumping out Mortal Kombat 1 trailers.
I think just another, they'll probably just have their next trailer. This would be a great time to showcase some footage of the guest characters, maybe, we got Homelander and Omni-Man and this horrible looking Ermac that looks like there's a lot of comparisons, like gross old mummy looking Ermac. But I would also imagine that the trailers that they've been releasing, like the Lin Kuei trailer and one also popped up over the weekend, they kind of are themed with certain characters and parts of the story that's emerging. Those are so jam-packed with it. They're not only gorgeous, they not only reveal cameos and some background stuff, and then maybe a new character or two. Those all feel like Evo level reveals to begin with. So I figured we just get another one of those. And man, if you got Homelander, John Cena, whomever in it, that's just another cherry or two on top. But I think Mortal Kombat has no problem with what they've got in the pipeline right now, just releasing it as the Evo reveal 2, because it's all been so high level.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're probably going to see a theme trailer, because they're all comic book characters, right? So having Omni-Man and Homelander and Peacemaker. Yeah, I think having a trailer where you showcase each of those one after the other, because they're not really going to be story characters anyway, but you show kind of what they can do, you show the fatalities, I think that's most likely what's going to be. So even if it's not characters that it's characters we're aware of already, right? I still think that's going to have enough cinematic and hype value to, make the audience go wild anyway.
Absolutely. Speaking of making the audience go wild, King of Fighters. Anything there?
Oh, yeah. So, King of Fighters is currently in its second season. We have 2 more characters coming after Nudged, who was the most recently revealed one. But they are both silhouetted, so we don't know who they are. And I am very hopeful, because the first silhouette actually looks a lot like Hinako, who is my girl in KOF 02UM. And, I mean, she's ridiculously stupid in that game. There's no way they're going to make her that dumb again. But I'm still very hopeful because I like the character a lot. And the general speculation on these silhouettes has been that it's Hinako and Duolon, who are both decently popular characters. But since they're silhouettes, you don't know. This is just what people have been thinking about, right? So I think we're going to see a double reveal here, which shows those 2 characters. And, whether we go into gameplay or not, I don't know. But they're going to show us who these last 2 Season 2 characters are. And considering Samurai Showdown actually got 3 seasons back in the day, and KOF 15 has been a lot more successful. I think they might even go straight in to say, Season 3 is coming as well.
Right on. Melty Blood type Lumina. Anything there?
It's been a while since we had a character release in that, but I believe they're still working on it. The game seems to be doing quite well for them, and they're also they're the same company that do the Fate series, which I don't follow at all, but it's quite big. And it has a massive mobile game called FGO, and they've been shoveling characters in from that instead of actual Melty Blood characters, which I've seen some people kind of upset about, but I think that's probably paying their bills. So I think we might see, some super hyped mobile game character just get, oh, hey, here's this character, and, the wallets just come out.
A game that could cause the wallets to come out, and it hasn't for a minute, but Dragon Ball FighterZ, if you guys remember that game, it's going to be at EVO. Are they going to have some big announcement? Are they finally going to announce rollback netcode?
They already announced it, but are they going to announce when it's actually coming is the question. I think we're going to see some news on the rollback, but I think for Dragon Ball FighterZ, there has never been an official announcement, but there's been a lot of things pointing towards a Dragon Ball FighterZ 2 being in the works. But I do not think EVO is a big enough venue for Dragon Ball, because it goes beyond just fighting games, right? Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball is such a massive IP that I would expect a show like E3, Tokyo Game Show, maybe even the Game Awards, to have that kind of reveal. I really don't think EVO is going to be where we get the announcement of Dragon Ball FighterZ 2, if it is indeed in the works. If it was already announced, we'd see a trailer, but I think Dragon Ball FighterZ is going to be in the unfortunate position of not really getting much. But hopefully at least we get, actual confirmation on when the rollback is happening, because I know people have been kind of up in arms about that.
Yeah. All right, so maybe nothing, maybe a little quality of life update, but I don't know what to tell you, Dragon Ball FighterZ fans. It's been a minute, and we're ready for something new for sure. Okay, so those are what we think are gonna pop up for major announcements and reveals at EVO. We wanted to talk about one more thing today before we jet on out of here. And Nick, you just recently engaged in the beta tests for Tekken 8, right? And then we had I know you don't want to talk too much about it, but Grand Blue Fantasy Versus is doing a little action there. Just a little bit of your experiences, responses, what you have to say. What good things do you have to say about them? All
right, well, actually, I would rather start with the bad.
I thought you didn't have anything good. That's why I was saying, the list would be very short, so you could get that nailed and then...
Okay. Let's talk about Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising. As everyone knows, who knows anything about me, I was a huge fan of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. It was my main game for 3 years now. I've been a massive supporter. I've been doing TO, doing commentary. I've been playing it. Rising has gone in a completely different direction, one that I do not like. It does not vibe at all with what Grand Blue Fantasy Versus was, and this is not just my subjective opinion, it's a pretty general consensus. Now, whether you're able to enjoy the game that was presented despite that is a different question. Some people are, I am not. So,
what don't you like about it? Yeah, what are the sticking points?
There's so much.
Give me three big ones, three big turnoffs.
I mean, the first one that became a huge discussion point was the removal of any kind of drawback on the easy inputs, which really, changes a lot about the game, and it forced them to do a lot of changes that kind of just mess up characters' kits. Because, for example, charge characters, you have to make their moves be a one-button special now, right? So then you have to change them a lot because they would be unbalanced that way, right? So now they just feel like they don't fit anymore. Like the character design has kind of been thrown out the window. So ironically, a lot of characters feel unfinished, despite being based on a game where characters were extremely polished.
Okay.
And a lot of the stuff with that, like always having access to a one-button DP with no drawback at all, is not really a great decision in this type of game, because pressuring is already difficult because here's the second change I should mention. They made many normals a lot more negative, so pressuring on block is much more difficult, and the throw window is absolutely gigantic. Like, okay, I'm exaggerating when I say this, but it feels like it's a whole second. Like, it's huge, and it zooms in when you're doing it, so it's like, it's very hard to miss the tech, let's put it that way. So pressuring people is very difficult. They also removed all the two hitters in the air. The second hit is no longer an overhead. So like opening people up, because the game already has a block button. So side switches are already not a thing. So opening people up is like very difficult. And here's the third and most controversial change. Their solution to that was to throw in a thing called, I believe it's called Raging Strike, which is an unblockable move that is 17 frame startup, and you can it's not unblockable if the opponent is in block stun, but you can easily do a medium which frame traps them into it, and there's nothing you can do about that except spot dodge or DP. But if you spot dodge, then I can still punish you. So you're just locked into force. You don't have any proper pressure, so you're locked into just spamming unblockables on people. And yeah, they cost meter, but like not enough for it to matter.
So is it Scrubfest 2023 all of a sudden, or is that the general kind of issue with it? It's simplifying stuff down and making it just a free-for-all for whomever wants to jump in?
For me, who played Granblue Fantasy Versus so intensely, it feels like they didn't have any faults at all in what they did with the game. Like everything feels completely jumbled, the characters feel unfinished, and as a result of them tampering with them without really knowing, it feels like a completely different development team. It feels like someone else just jumped into the code and threw stuff around, and I don't know. It's a mess. I've sent my feedback to Arc System Side Games. I hope I'm not alone. A lot of people have. I hope they will listen. And if this is the route they want to go with the game, I'm probably not going to play it. But at the very least, I want them to polish it, because it's a beta. So yeah, I mean, it's not a full release. It's a beta. So hopefully, they address a lot of these issues. Even if they do, feel pretty confident in saying that they've abandoned the Granblue that I liked. So yeah, I find it very unlikely that I will be playing Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising in the future, which is sad. But you asked for something good. Siegfried looks cool. The new stage looks cool.
Well, right on. How about Tekken 8? You gonna be playing any Tekken 8 in the future based on what you saw in the beta?
Hell yes. Tekken 8 impressed me a lot. Let's start with the negative there as well, just to be fair. So I think the biggest problem I had during the Tekken 8 beta test was it was very hard to get matches. A lot of times it would disconnect before the match actually started, and once you did get matches, the netcode wasn't terrible, but it felt like it was basically Tekken 7. Like, it wasn't that different.
There's a big expectation now, too, with the modern games that have been coming out. Street Fighter 6 is probably the biggest example, that the netcode has a whole new level of acceptability, and it's, if you fall past a certain floor, you're living in the past, and that's just not acceptable now. So you really got to step that up. So I hope that they level that up, because it's so easy to just pour water on the whole experience if your netcode isn't good.
Yeah, and it's a beta test. It's a network test. I understand that this is unlikely to be the netcode we get at the end, but we did beta tests for Guilty Gear Strive and Street Fighter 6, and both of those were close to what we got in the end product, and they were really good.
Yes.
So Tekken 8 being kind of subpar, or at least like mediocre, it's not a good sign. But hopefully, they manage to work on it more. I think this matchmaking issue is not going to be in the final game. You're probably going to get matches just fine, because that was a bit of an issue in the beta. But if the connection quality isn't there, it's kind of sad. So I hope that gets upped, because I think that's the biggest hurdle now. We did a podcast episode when they announced Tekken 8, and we talked about how gorgeous it was. And my PC isn't high. It's kind of high-end, but it's not like a monster computer. So I had to tone it down a bit. I had to go to medium settings. And even on medium settings, the game looks really good. Like, I was impressed through most of my time with it, just looking at it. I was like, man, this is a beautiful game. I think the art direction, the stage design, the character design, and just like how some moves interact with each other is amazing. And the general love in the game really comes through because they actually added something that Tekken generally did not have, but a lot of other fighting games used to have and kind of dropped, which is unique intros between characters.
Yeah.
If they have some kind of connection. Like if Kazuya and Jin fight each other, they don't even say anything, and they just like slam their fists against each other and lightning blows everywhere, and it's so cool. And if Lily, who I play, if she meets Asuka, then they, they're super catty, and then they have this like stare down before the match starts. So, that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. It's
you
like
have to call me
service.
Velociraptor. That's from Step Brothers back in the day. That's one of the places I kind of got my name from. And hopefully someday they put that into a pre-fight dialogue.
We can only dream. We can only dream. But yeah, I think the main point of contention when it comes to Tekken 8 as far as how it plays is the heat system, which I think has interesting aspects, but it also has aspects that really don't fit in Tekken. And the stuff that people were worried about is kind of exactly what people were worried about, where you go into this mode called heat, and when you're in that mode, you actually cause chip damage to your opponent, which generally is not a thing in Tekken. Like there are a few situations where you can like knock people against the wall, where you get some kind of chip-ish damage. But here you get chip damage, and characters who can do a lot of safe strings can basically shred away 50% of your HP on block. Yeah. So it feels like a very unrewarding mechanic, because it's also one of these things that you just have. You have it once every round. So if you just pop it at... There were a lot of Twitter clips with like some of the top Tekken players. They would just pop it at the start of the round, just throw out a bunch of moves, and then the opponent's already at like 40% health and with very little counterplay, which feels kind of dumb. But everything outside of that, I really felt was good. They did some quality of life changes to some things, like in Tekken you can get a side hit or a hit from behind, and then it's quite like awkward to combo them. But if you use your, I don't know if it's actually called screw here, it was called screw in Tekken 7. They might have changed the terminology in Tekken 8. But if you use your screw move, which is like type of move you only get once during a combo, think of it like an OTG in Marvel, for example, like to give an easy example, that will actually align the opponent. So if you get a side hit on them, and you can just throw out the screw move and they will align as if you hit them from front. So the combo becomes easier. And that's like an interesting type of simplification that I don't mind.
A little quality of life.
Yeah, there's some quality of life stuff in there to help people, because Tekken is a quite complicated game. I think it still has a lot of that complexity. I just hope that they do some adjustments to the heat stuff, because I feel like in combos, it was fine. I didn't really mind it. It was decently cool. It's more like the whole chip thing. Like, I don't really think that should be in Tekken at all, but the developers clearly do. But if it's going to be there, they really need to tone it down, because it's a little bit much at the moment.
So after experiencing the beta for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus and for Tekken, scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to play each game?
I mean, look, I really loved Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, so this is an extremely emotional take, but 0. I have no interest at all in Rising. For Tekken 8... I'll give it a 9. I'm really excited to play it, but I have an offline scene available, and Tekken is really big in Stockholm, so if I were a player who had to resort only to online, I'd probably lower that to a 6 or a 7.
All right. Well, for those of you that have either gotten to play the betas or have just consumed a bunch of information and watched people's footage and heard reactions like this, where are you at and how excited you are to jump into these games given the snapshots that we've had so far? Nick, I want to ask, anything else that you wanted to tack on to the end of this before we sort of round things out? You can't even say play Grand Blue anymore, can you? You're like,
I can't,
no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It was my like sign off line for so long, but no, I can't do it.
Don't play Grand Blue? Is that what we're gonna go with?
No. If you enjoy Rising, play it. I'm not gonna tell anyone to not play something ever. But hell, play Tekken 8.
Play Tekken 8.